Thanks for joining me on About Alberta Tech, which is focused on introducing Alberta tech companies to Albertans. Our goal is to share the innovation and diversity that exists in this province in quick bites. My name is Lenora Thomas, and today I'm joined by Myrna Bittner, founder of RUNWITHIT Synthetics. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for inviting me, Lenora. Looking forward to this.
Me too. I think you are one of the first female founders that I've spoken to in Edmonton, which I'm super excited about.
Yes.
So let's start with some background on you. How did you get into tech?
I guess, in a traditional way. So started at the U of A. I got my undergrad in English and sociology and decided I needed to do something practical. So started an MBA then immediately following, and between year 1 and year 2 was when I started my first tech company. So, and I started this co-founded by my husband and life partner, Dean Bittner. And he is kind of a self-taught technical genius. Back then we were just kind of beginning. The internet was a year old. And we decided that, given my background in humanities and communications and then beginning in business, that it was really an opportunity to enhance real-time remote productive communication. And so we developed a groupware product. And that was our first kind of venture into technology. There was no tech ecosystem here.
No, definitely not.
Convinced UPS to pick up boxes from us that shipped all over North America from a basement of our house out by Elk Island National Park. And that was kind of how we got our start. And went on to also in the 90s found a neural net and 3D visualization research company. So people didn't really even know what neural nets were back then. We thought the name was really clever. We called it Neural VR, and everybody thought we were just bananas. But ended up doing very well, and that kind of set the foundation for what we're doing today.
That's amazing. And so when did you start RUNWITHIT Synthetics, and what does it do?
So we started RUNWITHIT Synthetics in 2014, and our original mission was to use what we had in our artificial intelligence backgrounds and automation platforms to create realities around systems that were really troubled by complexity. And this was the complexity of the interconnected systems. This was complexity of people. This was just something that we felt systems and the scale of them and the realism and the interactions that they were having was just beyond kind of what they could imagine, let alone engineer for. And so huge kind of value proposition. You think of the Phoenix payroll system and the Metro Line LRT switching system and things that it was just like, it doesn't matter how much money you pour at it. In traditional ways, it's really challenging to kind of overcome and understand those complexities.
It is.
And so we started building realities around those systems so that they could face them before they went live. And this led us into the world of human behavior and all different kinds of edges of systems, so connections to other systems and ripple effects and impacts and environmental conditions. And that kind of brings us to where we are today, because people started saying, you know what, you're creating the future. And you know what, can you create this future for this city, for these, under these conditions? In energy, in disasters, and that kind of brings us to what we do today, is all different kinds of really large scale and smaller scale critical systems that include people and infrastructure, technology, environment, scenarios, economics, you name it, and health as of late.
Okay, so can you give us an example of one that you've a project that you've been on that you've had to work your way through all of those complexities?
Sure. So one that we've accomplished recently is with the Electric Power and Research Institute. We developed the ability to synthesize energy grids early in 2020. And our first customer happened to be the Electric Power and Research Institute, which is kind of right at the very top. So it's kind of like swinging in the baseball park and hitting a home run in a major league game. It's the first time you swung the bat. So it's like, wow, feeling very lucky. But we were really challenged because while we had been synthesizing energy grids in cities and different energy technology and electric vehicles, in this project, their concern was resilience. So what happens, how do we invest in things that make it better when the lights go out? So we had to synthesize the energy grid in an area of Phoenix and Tempe in Arizona. Then we had to turn the lights out and really delve deep into human behavior and the conditions, the economic conditions, the health conditions, the how people use power and energy in their homes currently, what would happen to them if they didn't have it, now that people are working at home, more so due to COVID. What happens to vulnerable populations, people who are using medically assisted oxygenation already, let alone amplified under COVID. So they call this a dual disaster scenario. So, challenging conditions of COVID-19, as well as a long-term power outage. And really, our mandate was to explore how much we could come to understand about a synthesized population in that environment under those conditions that haven't happened yet, and then how we could inflect. So how we could change different things or mechanisms or investment that the power company might make to understand just who would benefit and whether or not there was opportunities to change the way they brought the power back on, build community resilience during outages so that the impacts wouldn't be as much or as serious, and really kind of explore everything from even trust in utility companies and how that would be changed during an outage under different conditions.
Wow, that is amazing. And like, how did you figure out how to synthesize the energy grid, first of all, before you actually made it to the rest of them?
So this is a kind of something that we do in modeling practice, and that we learned how to do when people would ask us how to create things that hadn't happened yet. There's a certain amount of fundamental understanding about how grids are structured and the different assets in a grid. And then there are tons of engineering simulations of grids out there. But really our mandate was to not necessarily look at what the power company looks at in terms of, them being the hub and pushing power out. Our mandate has always been, how do people use the grid? So because we're creating conditions like I bought an electric vehicle and I'm going to plug it in and it hasn't happened yet, we have to create that demand side of those models. And so we do everything from looking at Google Earth and looking at where transformers are and how many houses are hooked to what transformers and where the substations are, to then building very sophisticated artificial intelligence that can fill in the gaps of that infrastructure. And
then tying that to the more human side of it.
And then tying it to human activity. Yeah, I'm watching that demand be pushed back.
That is so awesome. I love it. I would not have known where to start on that one. Okay, so why did you start your company and why did you choose Alberta?
So I think we started our company because we've always been problem solvers. It's something that gets kind of addictive after a while. And when you see really big things that people are struggling with, so system complexity is just something that is not slowing down, and it's really big, and people couldn't seem to spend enough money on traditional methods to solve it. There's opportunity in some of those really big problems, and the opportunity for us was, technology is kind of losing its shine. People are just getting very frustrated. They don't want to update their phones. They didn't want to update their computers, and this is just wrong. And the people producing are also living a very a challenged life, and they used to call it firefighting in the digital world, and that was kind of your life was firefighting. And I think and it doesn't need to be. So if we could experience reality before it happens, we can help everybody have better futures. The people who are working in these industries, the people who are living their lives on the streets, and we're really hoping that we get to deploy more of our modeling and technology to help through COVID as well.
Definitely. Okay, and so why did you choose Alberta?
Why did I choose Alberta?
Yeah.
My parents are here. Our family is here.
Yeah.
It's really rather, you can be really rather quiet locally, and yet be very successful internationally. So there's not a lot of kind of entrenched cookie cutters or process that you have to go through when you start a business here. And we've just found the most amazing talent coming out of the University of Alberta, primarily. We have some folks from BC as well. But really access to just amazing talent has been a huge draw. So we are fully remote, we always were, but most of our staff was based in Edmonton, well, is even today. We just don't see them often enough.
Especially now. Okay. So as far as your next steps, what are you growing towards with the company?
I think a few things we're becoming aware. So we always seem to get pulled into these things because we're revenue funded. But the real profound need for systems to be built that are resilient systems, that are dynamic systems that can respond to all different kinds of volatility and changes, to help people understand that there are things that are fundamental kind of vulnerabilities in a lot of the ways they're doing business now, because they're reliant on certain things to be in existence, and those things might be changing. And so that's really important. We also are finding ourselves to be in the middle of an interesting space in the smart city space. Space where there's a lot of new technology and opportunity, but a lot of challenges on the municipal side and the government side, and how they understand the interconnections of those things, or how to validate them in context. And so we can be kind of that middle ground platform. And then modeling, as everybody knows and has heard in the lexicon now, is becoming more and more aware. People understand the need for modeling forward, so we can get better at the future. We haven't been very good at it in the past. And so this is something that we are incorporating into our models, more and more of the domain expert models from around the world. And so I think this is a really fantastic place to be kind of incorporating all of that expertise, so people can get a multi-sided perspective when they're making some of these critical decisions. Definitely.
Having a visual, or having that understanding of, if you turn off this piece, it's going to impact this piece, is really important in those decisions. And I think, especially with what we're seeing with COVID, the difference from a model 2 months ago versus a model now, and a future looking model, can be very different.
Yes, and there is no difference between health. There is no dichotomy between health of your population and the economy, and businesses and mental health. And they're all actually one, and they're all actually interconnected. And it's that imperative needs to be understood.
Definitely. And what you're doing makes it easier, which is great. I know that for my company, we deal with machine learning, and introducing people that are unfamiliar with modeling and unfamiliar with machine learning, you have to start with a lot of education to connect the dots. So anything that makes that easier is great.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So what else do you think our community should know about you and RUNWITHIT Synthetics?
One of the things that we like to deliver is hope. And that these the complexity in trying to figure out the future is something that's approachable. And we should be trying to approach it, and we should be celebrating the amount of science that is happening around us, and finding better and better ways to expose it, to have people understand some of the complexities around issues of even public policy, and that we really need to be understanding and exploring all of the different ways of looking forward, rather than just relying on sound bites. There is so much more that's attainable. And so we have a lot of kind of initiatives and efforts underway in various cities around the world that are helping people understand this and explore this with all kinds of stakeholders. And we shouldn't just throw up our hands and say, you know, oh, it's too complicated. We have the technology now, and that many people can use to explore and understand and advantage themselves in that complicated world.
That is an amazing message. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really amazing meeting you, and I really look forward to seeing what else you guys do.
Yeah, thanks, Lenora. It was wonderful to meet you too.